It is your Thursday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everybody out there is having a great day. Fantastic show coming up. A lot of Wolves talk with Jon Krawczynski from The Athletic. Bringing him on for the first time onto the show. Good stuff. Talking big picture Wolves this season and some interesting developments and what we might look for along the way the rest of this season. Some Twins thoughts at the end of the show as well. First, though, what I miss, Gophers and Vikings here in the opening segment. We'll start Gophers basketball. A couple interesting things on two fronts. Men's basketball team has had a pretty easy go of it so far this season, but then Missouri was on the schedule Wednesday night. Pretty good SEC team, a team that, maybe expected to be in the mix for the NCAA tournament this season. They've kind of gone through their rebuild, and now they're on the other side of it. Gophers obviously kind of more in the beginning stages of a rebuild, first year of Nico Medved's tenure. It was presumably looking pretty good for a while. I wasn't able to see any of it. I don't think most of you were able to see any of that game because it was not televised. I think there was only one option to watch it. If you had, I think, SEC Network, you could stream it through SEC Plus, ESPN Plus, but it was very convoluted. For all of the channels that we all have right now or are asked to have right now, it does feel a little bit absurd is maybe the wrong word, but it's surprising when you can't find a major college basketball game between two Power Four schools. It's the way of life. I think this happens once or twice a year, so I'm not going to get too worked up about it, but you couldn't watch it unless you had certain streaming packages. I did not. Gophers held a lead into the second half. They were probably feeling pretty good about themselves, and then, I think it was a 20-1 run, something like that. Maybe it got even bigger at a certain point. Missouri ends up pulling away and winning 83-60. So, the first 25 minutes of the game tells a different story than the last 15, but all of it matters. I'm sure there's plenty for Nico Medved to bring to his guys, both good and bad, right? Like, hey, we were right there with this team. We were right there with what figures to be a pretty decent or maybe shading towards good SEC team, comparable maybe to some of the the average or better than average Big Ten teams they might see along the way. Here's what we did well. Here's what we can improve on. So probably a good time for that test, a good time for those lessons. But that's disappointing nonetheless when you give up that big of a run when you were in the mix and you were in position to win the game potentially if you had a better second half. So teachable moments only go so far, but they are important in this moment. Gopher women's basketball team, we learned Mallory Heyer, who unexpectedly left the teams and announced she was transferring a few weeks ago. Didn't know where until just a little while ago. She is going to Oregon, fellow Big Ten team Oregon, which feels weird to say, but that is part of the Big Ten now. She's going to Oregon. I think she's graduating from the U here pretty soon this semester, and then she's going to Oregon starting in January, and then she'll have another year of eligibility next season as well. So someone who started a ton of games for the Gophers the last 3 seasons, left a bit of a void at center for them, but they haven't missed a beat. They've been great so far. Don Plitzwhite's team, like we talked about yesterday, they've been great even without Mallory Heyer. Cruising past opponents, including Marquette earlier this week, 90-47. That's a you don't pay attention so much when they're clobbering lesser non-conference opponents, but when you put a Big East team into that kind of mixer and beat them by 43, you do tend to notice that. So Mallory Heyer going to Oregon. Gophers continue to cruise, and we'll see how it works out for both sides. Quickly on the Vikings before we get to Jon Krawczynski, just kind of listen. 17-game season. Every game is going to be big, but I like to play around with the simulators, the playoff simulators. This game against the Bears feels like this is it for playoff talk. If they lose this game, I think we can stop talking playoffs because the realistic path, if you lose this game, feels very, very small. Right now, according to the New York Times simulator, they're sitting at around 11%, which seems fair. If they beat the Bears, it goes up a little bit. You win one of the next two after that, at Green Bay, at Seattle. That's neither of those are easy, but let's give them like a 30 to 35% chance to win either of those games, which means it's maybe a coin flip to win one of those two, not both, but one of those two going forward. And then you've got a string of NFC East games. It's like the Commanders, the Giants, the Cowboys. Can't remember if it's actually that order. You got to sweep those. And again, not easy, but none of those teams are great. Washington's more disappointing this season than anything. Jaden McDaniels has been injured. Their defense is terrible. The Giants, Jackson Dart's in the concussion protocol. They just fired their coach. Dallas can't stop anybody on defense. Like, those are all winnable games. And then you come home for the final two at home against Green Bay and Detroit. You'd have to win one of those two. That gets you to 10-7. Again, 10-7 is not the most important thing about this season. J.J. McCarthy's play and finding out about him are the most important things. But those can kind of go hand in glove, right? Like he talked Wednesday about how, yes, this is a time for development, but we're still trying to win. This is a team with championship aspirations. We've got to kind of marry my development with that idea, but we're still trying to win. So if he develops in a way the Vikings would like to see him develop in the last 8 weeks of this season, wins could follow. So those two things could go hand in hand. Now, they could go 4-5 in the next 9 games, or I said 4-4 in the next 8 games. Sorry, there's just 8 left. And you could still find out a lot about McCarthy that's positive, and you miss the playoffs, and you're still like, okay, what? I wouldn't trade making the playoffs for not finding that out. So McCarthy is still, the development is still the biggest piece. But I am saying, like, hey, you can do both. Why not do both? Absolutely critical, though, to beat the Bears this weekend. They've already beaten them once. They could be 5-5 overall, 3-0 in the division if they win this game. So not out of it yet. Still, let's not get too ahead. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and just like punt straight to 2026. This year still matters, even if his development is the most important thing at this time. Hey, I'm very happy to be joined on Daily Delivery today by Jon Krawczynski from The Athletic. Covers mainly the Timberwolves, but you write a little Vikings over there as well. You do a lot of great stuff. Jon, how you doing?
Good, Randball. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
This is fun. So we're in full swing in the season and just kind of keeping my head above water. So it's
I
been
know.
good.
I appreciate the time today because, yes, like you said, we're 11 games into the Timberwolves season, and I'm having a hard time kind of, I don't know what to make of this team yet. Maybe that's okay because it's only 11 games. I thought I would know more about them, though, just because of how much continuity they had from last season. You take Nickeil Alexander-Walker out of the rotation. Admittedly, an important player for them, but I felt like there would be more of like, hey, we're picking up where we left off last season, and then they've just some struggles against good teams. And I know Ant was out for some of it. Like it's been it's been a little bit more disjointed than I might have liked. But 7-4, they're taking care of business against these bad teams. I really still haven't seen them had like a real key signature win yet, though. Like what do you make of the start this year?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. I mean, I would say that it was definitely underwhelming and maybe even borderline disappointing right at the start of the season because not only were they, not only was that continuity not shining through, but I mean, defensively, they were just terrible. And, for a team that was in training camp talking about returning to its defensive roots, talking about having that identity, to come out as flat as they were on that end of the floor was kind of concerning. But I would say that even in this last little kind of surge of wins against cupcake teams, the way that they are winning lately kind of indicates that, hey, maybe this is just turning around. Maybe it did just take a week or two to get, on the tracks and get Anthony Edwards back. Because earlier in the season, even when they beat the Indianas of the world and the Brooklyns of the world, it was kind of like ugly and they weren't really playing well. But really the last 3-4 games now, they are starting to, it feels like, put their foot on the gas. We'll see what happens when Denver comes this weekend and a few other, and the schedule stiffens, but you're at least seeing a little uptick in defense and just overall intensity and quality of play. So it's definitely a, kind of wait and see kind of a thing, but there are signs that, hey, maybe the Timberwolves of old are starting to kind of formulate here.
that still needs to be their identity for now, right? Like if you look at their offensive rating is pretty good right now. They're like top 10, I want to say, and the defensive rating is still down. Extremely small sample size, but I'm trying not to like get ahead of myself too much, but and saying like, well, is their identity changing? Are they becoming more of an offensive team as we see? We'll talk about Jaden McDaniels and obviously a dynamic offensive player. They've got like some of their younger guys, Shannon, once he gets healthy and gets going, Dillingham, like they feel like more offensive minded than defensive minded people.
Yeah, I actually think there's an argument to be made that maybe setting your sights on being that team from 2 years ago that was the number one defense by a mile is unrealistic at this point. And I also would argue that maybe if you really want to be a team that can go deep in the playoffs and even go to the finals, do you need the number one defense? It would be nice if you had it. Yeah, but I would, if I had my choice, I would rather have the number 4, 5, 6 defense and then the number 5, 6, 7 offense rather than number one defense, 12th through 15th offense, something like that. And I do think that, as long as you have Rudy Gobert, there's always going to be this kind of feeling that, hey, we should be a really good defensive team. And I think that's true. But I do think that we are seeing the makings of a team that can be versatile and really dynamic offensively. And so maybe, we are shifting to a thing where that gap between the offense and defense is a lot closer. And maybe they start to win games more with shot making and ISO and just the individual talent that they have offensively than they do necessarily just locking guys up and suffocating them in 105 to 98 games.
Got to be able to do both, right?
You sure do. Yeah.
This is kind of like what the Vikings said at the start of the season. It hasn't really borne out, but like you want to be able to win any kind of game. You want to be in any kind of fight. And I feel like maybe that is evolving as the roster evolves, as their identity evolves, but we'll see. One of the most jarring things at the start of the year, John, was we spent so much. I spent so much. I'm sure you did too. At the start of in training camp and as the season was getting to the starting point about, okay, you got Mike Conley, you got Rob Dillingham. How does this all fit together? Then, woof, rug pulls out. Dante DiVincenzo, starting point guard, like a day before the season started, right when the season started, whenever it was. And then against Portland, you get Bones Highland, kind of saving the game a little bit. Like he gave them the stability in that game and a couple others when they didn't kind of have their footing quite yet. I've got a more philosophical question about point guard in a second, but I'm just flat out. Where are we at with that in your mind right now? How is that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's playing out sort of the way that I expected in terms of, I just think that the personnel on this team calls for what Chris Finch is doing, especially with the starting lineup. You have Edwards and DiVincenzo sharing the backcourt, and they are really what we're doing right now. And what we're seeing right now is Edwards is the pseudo point guard. Like it's not DiVincenzo. It's the ball is in Edwards' hands, and that's
or Randall.
Randall, correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I thought during the summer, even looking at the way that this kind of roster was assembled, that was going to be the thing that Chris Finch would eventually have to get to. I didn't expect it to happen right away. I know that, he loves Mike Conley. He feels a real allegiance and a trust in Mike Conley. And Conley has had stretches this year already where he's playing okay. And doing well. But I think for Chris Finch to acknowledge right out of the gates that this is the best way to go forward is notable because it goes against what he normally likes to do from an offensive standpoint. And it is working because that 5-man unit, I believe, is the most efficient or has the best net rating of 5-man unit in the league. So, and one of the things we saw the last couple of years with the Wolves is, generally speaking, they wouldn't start out games very well. That starting group really didn't go well. And then once you started to mix in Nas and Nikhil and Dante and stuff, then the game started to shift in the Wolves' favor. But now they're getting off to better starts because I just think that Anthony Edwards has taken a leap from a playmaking, understanding situation. And then just that 5-man group fits together really, really well right now. And so while Dillingham is still learning and still figuring things out, and while Mike Conley is still 39 years old and not getting any younger, this is, I think, the best way to go. And it's clicking in pretty well.
I think Mike might only be 38. You gave him an extra year. Yeah. I think we need to be kind. He doesn't need more than we're giving him. So philosophically, then, are we asking the wrong question about point guard? Are we saying you've got to have a traditional point guard because this is what teams do, and then kind of making this false choice between Dillingham and Conley? Or is the path forward for the next 5 years someone who can play next to Ant, who can be more of kind of like a combo guard, secondary scorer? Like, do they need just simply a dynamic player because he is ascending to this point where he should have the ball in his hands this much, and this is the modern NBA. He's not Shea, but like, Shea's not like a traditional point guard necessarily either. He's going to distribute, but he's going to score. Like, is this the path forward? Do you just need someone else there, maybe an elevated version of what DiVincenzo gives you in the moment, to truly become that elite team?
Yeah, I believe that's the way the league has evolved, is that, the Mike Conleys, the Chris Pauls, even the Tyus Joneses of the world are few and far between now. There are not anymore very many just floor generals that organize offense, move it. They'll score a little bit here and there, but really their job is to be the quarterback and get everyone else involved and go about it that way. Maybe eventually, it'll swing back, but right now, what we see more often than not is that the combo guard is the new thing. Like, it's positionless basketball, and it's Anthony Edwards, it's James Harden, it's Luka Doncic, it's all of the Shea, it's all of these guys who have the ball in their hands a lot, create a lot of gravity with the attention that they receive, and then either use that gravity to get their own shot, get fouled, get to the line, do those things, or move the ball to open players for corner threes and cuts to the basket and things like that. And so in some ways, what Mike Conley was doing the previous 2 years, which was outstanding, playing really, really well for this team, it is a fading role in the league. And maybe there will be other players that come up that are just, just great that way. But right now, this is the way that the league is built. And so by going this way with DiVincenzo next to Ant, it's much harder to guard, I think. DiVincenzo is a real threat to shoot. He's shooting at volume. Like, Mike Conley is a, I'll shoot when I'm open type of a guy, but you have to worry about DiVincenzo because he'll get it up. And so, and this just it really does empower Ant. And to Chris Finch's defense too, I don't think Ant was ready necessarily for this kind of responsibility 3 years ago.
Sure.
He has worked his way into a place now where he sees the floor pretty well. He makes pretty high level passes at times. He'll still turn the ball over here and there, but it's him and Julius, and they're doing it. It's sort of unconventional in one way, but it's kind of conventional for what the league is now.
Is DiVincenzo enough of a pressure valve release for Ant? Because I thought at times that, like, where he gets in trouble is when he thinks he has to do too much, when he doesn't have that kind of scorer next to him. They've kind of lacked. I mean, since the Towns trade, even before that, like someone who could create and make his own plays on the perimeter, things like that. They really just haven't had that, like, really go-to guy next to him. Really, I can't remember at any point in his career. Maybe like Russell a little bit, but he's a different kind of player. Like, so, like, is DiVincenzo enough of that? Is Jaden kind of becoming that? Like, I'm gonna get ahead of myself here, but like, I feel like they're almost still like just like a player short in terms of like where they eventually want to get. Maybe that's internal, external, but like, how do you kind of see the pressure valve kind of equation in this, and like wanting someone to be able to kind of pair up with Ant in a really truly dynamic way? Is that Dante? Is that Jaden? Is that somebody else?
Yeah, I would say right now, Dante is certainly playing better than he did last year.
For
And
sure. Yeah.
so I think he has found a little bit more of a defined role next to Edwards. He knows what he has to do. When the ball comes to him and he has even a sliver of daylight, shoot that thing.
Yeah.
And the only time that Dante gets into a little trouble is if he tries to create for himself, get to the basket. That's the kind of stuff that is not his game. So that's, to me, where I think the most exciting development of this early portion of the season has been what we've seen from Jaden McDaniels in a shot creation type of way. We've watched this guy for 6 years now, and we remember especially the first few years, it's like they really wanted him to be 3-and-D, sit in the corner, catch and shoot, and do it that way, and that just was not working. But
not a good enough shooter. Not quite.
No.
At least at that moment. Yeah.
At least at that moment. Now he's 54% for three. Like,
right.
What's going on? No, we'll see how sustainable that is. But I think, like, what I think makes this really intriguing is that it isn't just that he's on a heater from behind the 3-point line. It is that he can catch the ball, put it on the deck, get to the basket, raise up with that 6'11", those long arms, and shoot over people. And every time he gets to that mid-range, I think it's going in. Like, that's and he is actually one of the best finishers at the rim, I think, on the team as well. And so I think there's still another level for Jaden to go to, but he does look like that player who can do multiple things. And so if Ant is drawing on a penetration, then kicks, it's Jaden can catch and either shoot it from out there, or he can make something happen with it. And so that would be the place that I would watch for to see if it continues to develop. And I think that there are signs that, hey, maybe he could be a legitimate number 2. But if you put him and Julius Randle together with the way that they both are playing and how efficiently they are, I think that's enough. But we'll see if that sustains over it. But right now, that it's a pretty hard to deal with 3-man combination. And then you have Dante out on just, sniping from long range. Like, that's a nice core there of offensive players that seem to complement each other pretty well.
It does feel like their starting 5 is their best closing 5 at this time, which didn't always feel the case last season. You might have answered this already in talking about Jaden McDaniels, but I'm trying to sort through, like, if I'm thinking about surprises, both good and bad so far this season. I think, the continued ascent of Jaden isn't necessarily a shock, because I think we saw it for a decent sample size last season. But what to you so far has been either, a positive or a negative surprise?
Yeah, I would say that the interesting thing to me is that actually Jaden in the playoffs has been better than Jaden in the regular season pretty much every time. And that, it was always encouraging to me, but I am seeing more efficiency from Jaden, more consistency offensively. He's scored in double figures every game this season. You'd think, that's not a high bar, but actually it kind of is. And so I think there's 2 things that are helping that are a surprise, I would say. One is that in the past, it was very easy for Jaden to get lost in the offense and just not get attempts. Like, it was, whether it was Ant looking for his thing or Julius or, whoever it was, Jaden could just get kind of lost. And that's when the offense would get really stagnant, and it'd be a lot of ISO and Jaden standing in the corner and not doing a whole lot. This year, they have been able to, even when Ant has been out or when Ant has been in, they have been able to generate opportunities for him in a way that they had not before. So that's something that is a new development. The other part that right now, and we'll see if it sustains, but his above the break 3-point shooting has been a revelation. Like, so many players of his ilk are sort of painted into that corner, literally just sit there and shoot that. and that's it. And then above the break, you have no chance.
Right.
But he is off the dribble. He is, catch and shoot. He looks really confident from that space. And you can see defenders be like, I didn't know I had to deal with this kind of thing with Jaden McDaniels. And again, like he's not going to shoot 54% all year, but if he can make that at least be a threat, now it makes defenders close out on him, and now he can go by them even easier. So those two things, him getting involved consistently and then him shooting well from above the break, I think have really just opened up his offensive game in a way that we had not seen before.
Does the defense qualify as a negative surprise? Is it the young guys maybe not taking a step consistently yet? I don't know what I'm kind of searching for that. I mean, it's at 7-4, you feel better than he did at 2-3, but I'm kind of wondering where we sit with kind of things that you thought would be better.
Yeah, for sure. The defense has been a real problem. Now we have seen it uptick the last few games, but I don't really put a lot of stock into it, frankly, against the Kings and the Jazz. Like
Kings are what are the Kings doing, by the way?
Oof, they're a mess, man. They're an absolute mess. But so we will see how that progresses. I do think that they are playing more connected than they were early, that they're playing harder. But the big disappointment has been that when Rudy comes off the floor, the defense just absolutely disintegrates. And that's a rebounding issue with Randall and Nas. That's that's a product of Jaden being good defensively, but not outstanding. There are a lot of different things. And I think one of the adjustments that you've seen Chris Finch make over the last couple of games now is that when Rudy is off the floor, Jalen Clark and Jaden are both on the floor. And that's kind of also where Jaden's offensive kind of surge has helped, because you can put him on the floor as more of a lead sort of scorer as well. And then you play him off of the ball defensively with Jalen Clark on the ball. And that's a really nice combination. And so I want to see more of that and just see if that is the sort of fix that this group needed to just balance the Rudy minutes on and off. But there's been a nice little uptick that way, and we'll see if it sustains against better teams. But yeah, without question, the defense and the rebounding through the first 7-8 games was just not even close to good enough to be what they want to be. And it was actually kind of concerning, but Rudy's playing a little better. And then they made a few lineup tweaks that might address things a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a great point, because if you have those two guys on the floor, you mitigate a little bit of the need for Rudy to help all the time, the need for Rudy to be rim protecting, because hopefully you're stopping the ball at the point of attack more than guys getting by you, and then you do help Rudy, help, go clean up the mess again. I feel like they were Berenger is obviously an answer to kind of the question of, okay, how do you get better defensively when Rudy's off the floor? I wonder if it was if they had a perfect world, I wonder if they would have been able to add somebody like that a little bit sooner, or someone a little bit older. Like if they were ready for this moment where, okay, man, yeah, we're really struggling at big when Rudy comes off the floor, and even when Rudy's on the floor, sometimes he's getting older. What do we do now? I don't know if they have an answer to that question from a positionality standpoint, but maybe they're trying to work their way around it creatively, as they say. What the West is interesting. I feel like there's more bad teams in the West than I thought they were going to be, and there's certainly, I think the good teams are the teams we thought were going to be really good. I think the Spurs, everybody was like, they can be pretty good. And yeah, they're really good. And then, Denver, Oklahoma City, obviously, but Dallas, Sacramento, Utah was going to be very good. The Pelicans, there's more bad teams in the West than I was expecting.
Yeah, I do think it has been surprising to me as well, in terms of I always thought that I thought it was gonna be a real jumble from 2 to 11.
I did too.
And maybe eventually that'll all work itself out. But I did think Dallas was going to be at least competitive. They haven't been. I did think New Orleans was going to be competitive. They haven't been. And the Clippers are another team that I think is really kind of shaky right now. And I never was very high on them, but I at least thought that in the regular season they'd win some games and be jockeying for 6 to 9 somewhere in there and be tough out. And it hasn't really been that way. So it's still so early, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But I do agree with you that it does look like when you put Utah, New Orleans, Sacramento, there's more at the bottom of the West that should be like, hey, this is a win tonight.
Got to win this game.
You have to. Whereas I thought at the start of the year it was going to be like, man, where are the
easy games.
wins?
Yeah, where are the easy wins? Yeah,
yep.
There's been more of them.
And the Wolves right now are just in this really soft part of their schedule, even though they have Denver on Saturday, but it's really light for another week or so. And these are the times you have to make hay. You do. And so every one of these games coming up against these teams that are struggling are just need to get, because Oklahoma City looks great. Houston and the Lakers, I think the Lakers look better than I thought they were going to. And Denver are all going to be heavyweights to really have to deal with.
I mean, given that, like, it's hard for it's, as much as I look at the bottom, it's hard for me to see a clear path to top 4. It's not hard for me to see a clear path to top 6 for the Wolves, but like it kind of feels like they're in like a 5 to 7 kind of range, which is weird to say for a team that went to back-to-back Western Conference Finals, but they were the 6th seed last year. So like, are they good enough to be top 4? I think that was maybe an expectation at the start of the year, at least internally and maybe somewhat externally. Like, where do they fit into this jumble so far from what we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're good enough to be 3 or 4. I also think they could be 8. I think it is going to be that kind of a season where it's very realistic that 2 or 3 games is going to separate 3 through 9. Like that's I do. We talked about the bottom of the division, and that'll all fall off. But I do expect that there will be quite a bit of parity and just jockeying around. And so, I think that the Wolves are good enough to be a top 4 team, but I also think that there's, if you throw San Antonio and the Lakers in and you thought that maybe the Wolves were better than both of those teams at the start of the year, that's not clear right now. I want to see what happens with LeBron. I want to see what happens with Wembanyama and with, like, do these guys stay healthy? Do, how that all works out? But, it's going to be, I think, just jam-packed from, I would say, probably 3 through 6 or 7 at least. And so there's going to be stretches where you go 2 and 5 and you're down at 9. And then there's going to be stretches where you go 6 and 1 and then you clawing up to 4-3 or something like that. And so fans are going to be tearing their hair out, I think, a little bit, and just like going with the roller coaster. But that's just what I'm expecting this season. And so I do think it's still feasible because I really do. I like San Antonio. I like the Lakers. I like Denver. I like Houston. But I also think that, I mean, they're good teams, but they're not head and shoulders above what the Wolves are. And if they put things together, they can be right there with them.
Final thing, Jon Krawczynski, really appreciate this conversation and time. Again, I love to get ahead of myself because even though we're only 11 games in, I'm like, okay, what is this going to look like in January, February? This team, its organization chose continuity this offseason. They re-signed their own guys, bring back Naz Reid, bring back Julius Randle, lose one of your top 8 rotation guys, but really say we're gonna dig into. Last year was the transition. Last year they made the big trade, and now let's dig into continuity, kind of like year 2 of Gobert, where they really made a leap. Is that enough for the whole season? Is this year about being patient and seeing what you've got? Sometimes, like I said, this roster feels like they're a player short, but they also have cap considerations. Like, what do you think is the kind of like how are they operating? Let's put our GM hats on for 2-3 months from now.
Yeah, it's interesting because there is certainly a dichotomy with how they do operate, and in general, what we have seen is that within a season, they are fairly patient in terms of Chris Finch, Tim Connolly, like letting things play out for a little while. They don't make knee-jerk changes to the rotation. They don't, make wholesale schematic changes when they've had 3 or 4 bad games. They're kind of people that ride the guys that they trust and stay with them. That said, Tim Connolly has been one of the most aggressive deal makers in the league since he came to Minnesota. And so I do believe that the Wolves see themselves and think that they are in a window of competing for conference finals types of things. And so if in January, late January, they are treading water and it's not going well, and they don't have a feeling that they are competitive in the conference, I do think that Tim Connolly could go look for a point guard, could go look for another scorer, could go, try and find something to get too far in the weeds. I don't want to, but they're a first apron team, and there's a lot. It's hard to make a deal.
Yes,
but he could try to do that. That said, I also think that there is a belief internally right now that things will come together with this group, and that by mid-January, you'll look at them and say, you know what, this is a team that has a chance to be right in the hunt for home court advantage. And so we're not going to mess with that too much. Yeah. So it's kind of wishy-washy, but I think that's the state of things right now. And they will make a move if they need to, but I think that their preference is to hold the fort with this group and let it play out and give them every opportunity to come together and go deep and see what they can do.
And some of this is just fair or not, boils down to Ant. He's been second team all NBA a couple of years, but usually if you're going to be great, if you're going to be a finals team, you're going to have somebody that's first team, and that's him. Does he have one more jump, one more level to get to, and can he get there? Is ultimately, it feels unfair to put so much on him, but he is the superstar.
Yeah, to whom much is given, much is required, right? And so, and we have seen that early. I think, you take the Indiana game out where he only played 3 minutes. That's kind of messing with his averages, and he's 31 a game right now. And he's shooting great, making plays. He looks fantastic. So, I think he is capable of jumping into that. But the other part to quickly remind people is that the depth of talent in the league, to crack that top 4 or 5 in the league right now, is it's really difficult. You're talking Jokic, Shea, Giannis, Luka, and Wemby, and a few others that you can throw in there too. I mean, that's a damn good group. And so, but I think Ant is capable of it, and he's really showing that. Man, he's playing great right now, and I think he can get there. So
fast healer too. Only 4 games missed with
Wolverine, man.
He is. And that he finally didn't exaggerate an injury. It actually was real.
Yeah. Right.
All right, John. Hey, appreciate the time so much. Maybe we'll do this down the road as the season cooks up a little bit more, but appreciate it. Great coverage, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, man.
Great stuff from John. Love to have him on the show. Didn't necessarily do this intentionally. It's just kind of the way the schedule worked out. We have a double dose of guests from The Athletic this week. Aaron Gleeman expected to join me Friday. Of course, writes for The Athletic and also the popular Gleeman and the Geek podcast. So listen for that on Friday. We'll have plenty of Twins stuff to get into. Obviously, winter meeting stuff. Our own Bobby Nightingale reporting from the winter meetings this week. Basically, the message teams are getting from the Twins is, hey, check back later. We still don't know what we're doing. We still don't know what our payroll is going to be. We still don't know what the plan is, or at least we're not telling you. So that doesn't seem great. A lot of trade speculation in play. Byron Buxton, maybe. Aaron and I will talk about that more tomorrow. Doesn't feel great for the Twins right now. We'll call this the cooler. We'll call this a show, but Gleeman tomorrow, more Twins. They don't seem to know what their plan is right now, financially at least. We still don't know who the limited partners are that we were told about 3 months ago, so there's that as well. Till then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow.